Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this Inbound Logistics webinar presented today by Barrett Distribution Centers. We will be talking about scaling smarter, how the right 3PL partnership turns pain points into progress. Our guests are Tim Barrett, Chief Executive Officer of Barrett, and Bryan Corbett, VP of Marketing, Barrett Distribution. And here is our host, Amy Roach.
Thank you, Jeff, and welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for this live webinar. Tim and Bryan, welcome. Thanks for being our guests today.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah,
great to be here.
Excited to be here.
Yeah,
great to have you here. Yeah, I think everyone in the audience knows here that the pressure on brands to deliver today faster across more channels with less margin for error has never been higher. Consumer expectations are also constantly shifting. Retail requirements have grown more complex, and supply chain volatility has become really a fact of life. So in this environment, the brands that continue to thrive and scale successfully are the ones with the right partners, and that is where the 3PL comes in. And this environment is what really makes the brand 3PL relationship more strategically important than ever. So we're going to talk through today, how do you get to that great relationship? But before we dive in, I would love to kick it over to you, Tim, and to Bryan to introduce yourselves and give us the quick origin story on Barrett Distribution, excuse me.
Sure. So thanks. So I'm Tim Barrett. I am third generation with Barrett Distribution. So the company was founded in the 40s and with, at one single location, obviously, to start with. And my brother and I have been running the business together for about 35 years. Currently have about 20 locations across the country in about 10 states. So we're up and down the East Coast, through the central part of the country in Memphis and Dallas, and then in LA and Fresno on the West Coast. Business has grown, from the 40s, as a small business to a medium-sized business, grown consistently about 20 to 25% a year for 35 years. And so that compounding works. We've gone from a small business to a medium-sized business over those years, and currently have about 2,000 employees across the country.
Fantastic. Bryan, if you could introduce yourself quickly and talk a little bit about yours.
Sure. Bryan Corbett, VP of Sales and Marketing here at Barrett Distribution. Been in the industry, I've been in warehouses my whole life, about 25 years post-college. So I work on the commercial team, oversee our marketing department, and work closely with our clients from sales to onboarding to post-sales.
Fantastic. Glad to have you both here. So I want to start out by saying I know Barrett works with brands across apparel, footwear, and other sectors, and at all different stages, from established to even emerging businesses as well. Tell me a little bit how that range has shaped the way you think about fulfillment there.
So we obviously have to be flexible, but the range for us, so if I look at it internally, the range of customers that we have is good for us because we're obviously, across industries, when some are strong and others aren't, we gain from that. But we also had a good portfolio of really helping startup brands. We have customers that have that started with us really small when we could do their fulfillment probably from my office to becoming one of our largest customers. So that scaling has been a big part of it. So we said, I said earlier, we grow 20 to 25% a year. Half that growth comes from existing customers growing with us and half comes from new business. So we had a lot of great success with a mix of, large customers, Fortune 500, good medium-sized businesses to real startups that we've helped nurture and grow and help them develop their brand. And we take a lot of pride in that. We think we've been, a big part of their success and their ability to grow and scale. So had some really good success stories. One of our customers, as an example, we've taken, across their whole journey from startup to becoming a pretty major brand. It's OOFOS Footwear. Started with them at the startup phase, and they were headquartered in Boston. So we started with them on an East Coast facility. As they grew and scaled, they obviously, it's difficult when you're growing that fast to keep up with demand. And so they often were waiting for inventory to come in to fill orders. And so we made the decision to move them to our West Coast facility to get quicker access to the inventory. over the years, they grew, it continued to grow, and then we made a decision to we looked at their whole portfolio of business and decided we'd move them to the middle of the country just to because it was obviously considerable cost savings by doing that, mostly on outbound transportation. So that's been that's kind of a good success story of where we started with somebody very small and we're able to they grew with us, we grew with them, and been a really good partnership where we've now got them into a very automated facility that leverages a lot of the technologies that we've invested in.
Absolutely, great. And we're going to talk a lot about scale and probably return to that example a little further down the program. But what I'd love to do is get a little bit of market context so the audience can kind of understand. I think they're living through it. Supply chain disruption has kind of become a baseline condition at this point. So tell me a little bit about the specific challenges, as a 3PL, you're hearing about now from your client base.
Yeah. So, I mean, right now, most brands are not growing as fast as they were over the the past couple of years. So I think that's a big challenge. So there's a lot of cost pressure. They've endured tariffs, they've endured other cost increases. So we've worked with a lot of our brands to find different solutions that help them lower their costs. So an example might be small parcel outbound. Looking at all kinds of different alternative carriers, regional carriers, looking at different options. The trade-off, the consumer today, it seems, is less concerned about speed to delivery. They certainly want the package shipped when they order it, but they're willing to wait for delivery. So it gives us options to help lower costs, and I think people are more willing to accept that than they were a few years ago. So that adds a lot of complexity for us, right? As we add, all those carriers, then there's more sorts and more complexity in the DC. So yeah, the brands are going through a lot of complexity. We're going through a lot of complexity and a lot of changes over the last few years.
Yeah,
Amy, one of the things that to add on what Tim's saying, we've actually seen, I want to say, contraction in the way they approach a supply chain. It doesn't mean their business is shrinking or not growing even. I think Barrett, we have a large network, so we've always had the capability to spread everybody around. But we weren't necessarily chasing, you have to be within a day of your clients, and like some other companies might have done. And it worked out well because what we're seeing now is companies are trying to simplify their supply chain. So when there's uncertainty in the market with your company or you want to actually have a simplified supply chain. So we're seeing a lot of single node, Dallas, Memphis, New Jersey, realizing that, maybe we don't need to spread out our inventory, carry those costs. There's a lot of additional costs that people aren't aware of. And then when I heard Tim talk about, clients that have moved solutions moved around with different solutions, we're still able to do that, but we can say, hey, the timing isn't right for you guys, or we can give good advice on not chasing the next big thing, maybe chasing Amazon and being 2 days from everybody. Now, granted, that is important for some, but what I'm seeing on the sales side, especially is hey, companies are currently in 3 warehouses now, and it's a disaster, and they want to shrink it into one. They want to bring in B2B with D2C, so a true omnichannel solution out of a single node in Dallas, a single node in Memphis. And I think the nice thing about how we're set up at Barrett is we can do that, but when the times change, we can also scatter them again and do it maybe smarter. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to ask, so this is a good segue. Tell me a little bit about, where does the 3PL role start? Where does the 3PL come in, whether it's dealing with this complexity or dealing with other expectations? I know you're in those early conversations with brands. What are they asking for from their 3PLs?
So I think I guess we always start with, why did they reach out to us, right? So we want to make sure that there's a problem that they're trying to solve, and then that we think we can solve that problem. So we I don't want to make it sound like we have too much business, but we certainly want to we're not going to be successful in winning the business either if there's not a problem that we think we can help them with. So we really want to understand that from the get-go, and sometimes we'll refer them to a different solution. It doesn't mean necessarily a different 3PL, but just maybe there's another way to solve for the problem that they're trying trying to tackle. And so we want to make sure we can add value and solve a problem for them. So it might be that, they have grown and they've scaled, and there needs to be investment in the business, and they've got better things to invest their money in than automation and racking and things like that, and that we can invest in and know that we can also use that for for other customers down the road. We might be able to leverage some of the technology investments that we've made. So there's a lot of different things there, but we always start with what is the problem that we're trying to solve for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
go ahead, Amy.
Go ahead.
No,
Bryan.
I was just going to add real quick that it's interesting because I've noticed that many companies, especially on the e-commerce side, the younger companies who have really grown with Instagram and Facebook ads, have simply never run a warehouse, and so for me and for our team, and Scott Hotham talks about this all the time, but like building that trust early on is super important, because we tend to be once we figure out what the problems are, we tend to be maybe giving them advice that is incongruous with what they've been doing or what they've been told, right? And so it's important for us to on the people level to early on establish that, hey, we want to do what's best for you so we can help you fix your problems. And one of those things has been, they might have inventory in 3 different locations. They might have set up a B2B warehouse because their current 3PL couldn't handle omnichannel. And so we're trying to give them advice on what we think is the best way to run things. And that's usually solving a pain point. And to take that advice, you have to trust who's giving it to you, right? And so that's one of the pain points that we hear often is, this is just what we were told how we should be doing it. Mm-hmm. And so we're solving for maybe other people's mistakes or other people's decisions, and we try to do it in a way doesn't come across over the top or heavy-handed, right? Because ultimately, if they do choose to come to Barrett, we'll be responsible for the solution that we give them.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you're saying brands should really be looking for not just a transactional 3PL that's going to ship their stuff and store their stuff, but really like a strategic fulfillment partner.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that and how that works at Barrett?
Yeah, I'll just quickly chime in, like a trusted advisor, right, Tim? We talk about, consumers, we're driving customer solutions, and I think that's why we're probably maybe a level up partner for many. We do have a great startup program. We don't want to forget our roots and the stories like OOFOS, who started as an idea with us. But yeah, we become a trusted consultant that you don't pay consultant fees to, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, just going down a different path on that too is, at the end of the day, I think it really it comes down to the people that are going to actually handle the product, right? So, we always talk about really like you making sure that the facility that's going to handle the brand is the right facility and the right fit. So, that's really where the rubber meets the road. At the end of the day, is the people in the building and people that are going to have that final touch on your order before it goes out the door, and all those things. So. Those are the people that are going to make or break the business on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand also that Barrett works closely with local teams while providing corporate level training and support. Can you share a little bit about what that looks like and what the benefit is for brands if they, can have that set up?
Sure. Yeah. So we've certainly made a lot of investments in the business, right? So I guess a good example is, we are running, so in our business, we're a cost plus business. So we share our financials every week, actually, and every month, and every quarter with all our employees. But part of that is that they're vested in driving costs out. So we run what we call mini games or process improvement plans every quarter in every facility across the network. And for those teams to be successful, right, there's a lot of resources that we have centrally that help them make those games even more impactful. And we kind of leverage them, or we can have a greater impact by using our engineering team as an example, or our IT team, to help them. They may need to make some enhancements or changes or improvements in the system, or the engineering team can certainly help them running if it's a bigger project, they'll run an actual Kaizen and maybe do a collaborative thing with the customer and with one of our engineers running the Kaizen. So those corporate resources can be super valuable to the teams on the ground to basically leverage the idea that they might have and have it be maybe 50% more impactful or double the impact or those kinds of things by working together.
Fantastic. I want to shift a little bit and talk about technology. Obviously, technology and data are a huge part of what 3PLs have to offer today. Can you tell me a little bit about how brands are hoping their 3PLs are going to optimize fulfillment with technology and what some of those benefits are?
So we've obviously made a big investment in our IT team and our IT resources and our tech stack. It's we in a lot of ways we become a technology company that happens to do fulfillment. But I would say the other part of that is we've invested heavily into a data and analytics team that really provides insights for the brands. So not just for the brands, but also for our teams that are running the operation for that brand. So we leverage that data team to really help us with very insightful reporting that pulls out trends and pulls out things that are really helpful for the operation and potentially sometimes for the customer, right? So we can often provide insights to the customer by mining the data we have that they may not be aware of themselves about their own company.
Fantastic. Bryan, anything to share further on the technology side?
Sure. Yes, a lot. How much time do we have? But no,
we could do a whole other webinar on just that.
So it's a weird thing for me because I'm a nerd and tech is so important. But then I've moved around a little bit. I've been at Barrett for 5 years, so I'm not I haven't been here 20 years. And one of the things that I really like about our approach was actually maybe against how I thought it should be initially, right? And so what I've seen is that it's a feature to have a technical team here that can do a lot of custom things because that's a fit for our clients who need complex they just have so many different requirements, right? And as a level up partner and somebody who when I see companies come to us and they need this and then we take them live and they want to switch returns providers and they want to do something different. So having the technology capabilities set up in place, Doug Vargas done an amazing job here of having open API keys ready to go, ready to connect. It's been a huge thing for us and it makes the relationship sticky. And in an industry that is not as sticky as it used to be, it's a big value add to be able to do complex things and quickly because it really strengthens the relationship. So I guess the long answer is I've seen how technology here benefits both parties and both partnerships and actually strengthens the people relationship as well, which is something I don't think really happens a lot in technology. And a lot of people buy tech and they want to not talk to people anymore, right? And so, what I've seen is a really good, strong IT and data team, really getting deep with clients and fixing things, and it's been a great thing to watch. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, let's talk a little bit about that sticky relationship. I think if you could share some of what our audience is really looking for here is a good understanding of what really makes a 3PL brand partnership work. So what, from your perspective, and I'd love to hear from both of you, what really makes that 3PL relationship advantageous?
So I would say the first thing is communication. So just having open lines of communication, but also being communicative, right? So sharing the good and the bad and doing it timely and doing it quickly, I think is really, really important, right? We think we run great operations, but we have issues, right? Things don't always go perfectly, and I think that communicating that early and often is super important. Same thing on the brand side. If they're, we've had, probably you would think a well-developed brand that has, gotten to scale and is has a lot of things in place and different teams, and they run a sale that they don't tell us about, right? So, obviously that's, then everybody's scrambling and we're working, right? So, any of those communication things, it's just super important, and we want to make sure that whenever we, if there's bad news, like we communicate it right away, right? That's super important so that we can fix it and bring the customer in to help solve the problem.
Yeah, I would add, communication, and then the methodology, like what Tim's alluding to, and the word I always say it, but people say it, proactive communication. I mean, we think of the worst customer experience as an individual is feeling like, well, you didn't tell me. And so that's just an individual lesson that you can apply to your company, right? And I think on the commercial side, from the first call, I try to focus on setting expectations as well and communicating, but we can do that based off of mistakes that we made in the past as well. We've many 3PLs know that you can't recover from a bad onboard. We try to be honest in expectations. First 90 days are always a challenge. I don't say there's always problems, but they tend to happen right away and fast. And so we say, look, be a good partner, be visible. One thing, trying to add value here, Amy, I advise people to be visible early in the process, both parties. So, when you're thinking about running an RFP or trying to find a new 3PL, the best thing you can do, the best signal you can give to your next partner is that you're front and center on camera, and your other people are meeting our people. Because it's, Tim, you mentioned this before, that it's amazing how much more positive the relationships are, how better the emails are once two people meet, right? And so in this remote world we work in, a lot of our and multiple nodes and different people, that kind of sets the tone for the relationship and the stickiness early on. When if I can get a GM to take an hour out of his day to meet a prospect and start talking about the client and the solution, I've noticed that pays dividends immediately down the line when the account goes live and they're working with the CS team on the floor. Tim, we talk a lot about the people on the floor, the people touching the products. When I see a client coming into our warehouse for a week or two just to meet the folks on the floor, and engage with them and get to know, find out their names and their backgrounds. And these are the people touching the products. So these are all things that I think are, very sticky in the relationship, but they also just produce better results, right? That's why we're here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from what you're saying, it's not like there's a specific playbook. Here's how you build a relationship, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? It's all about being flexible and evolving with the customer as their brand change. Because also, let's face it, a company might come to you at one volume with one product, and 2 years later, they're not the same company,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think just on Brian's point too, it's, I tell myself all the time, and I think it's important, to assume positive intent, right? And it's easy to not assume positive intent. It's much easier to not assume positive intent when you haven't met someone. So, I think that whenever, when our teams meet, when the customers meet our teams, the people on the ground that are doing the work, the whole relationship is just so much better. And they know that this person cares. They know the person's competent. They don't make the assumption that they don't care or they're not competent. They know that they are, and maybe something has gone wrong, right? And they know that they're there to help fix it, and they're going to respond. Like our team's going to respond, much better when they know the customer and they have that deeper relationship.
Amy, and just on another off of what you just said, Tim, you can apply the same logic to employees as well. And when you have a large company scattered across the country, sales team moving in and out, operators in different states, our team works better when we meet each other and we're engaged and become friends and know the GMs and know the operators. It's building culture, right? Getting things done. At the end of the day, we're exception management. This industry is putting out fires, exception management. If I have a good relationship with an operator in California who's been at Barrett for a long time, and I can help a client, push something along, it's an easy thing to do when your team has a good relationship. So I think that I've seen that. We don't talk about it a lot because, clients pay the bills, but employees who drive the productivity and drive the success. There's been a huge lift. I feel like watching teams get to know each other when we're out on the floor, Tim, walking around, talking to people, putting faces behind emails is super important, especially in 2026.
Yeah. Absolutely. How about on the flip side of a good relationship, if maybe someone listening here is struggling, feeling like their partnership isn't going, where they want it to, what can be done to salvage that? Or maybe do you have any advice on how brands should be evaluating when it might be time to seek a new partner?
Nothing. It's over. I'm joking. No, things can always be salvaged. I think, again, the first thing is to just, suck it up a little bit and get on camera and face things directly is what I would tell people to do. The problems stink for both sides. We don't want to see anyone suffer. We want businesses to succeed. But my suggestion is, tackle it head on. Get on a Zoom, fly to the building. Take your phone out, make the phone call, because on our side, we appreciate that so much. It's easy to send. I've done it. Everyone knows, sent the long email, fire it away. I think that you got to tackle these things head on. You got to be honest and be truthful and don't be afraid to share your opinion. But then, realize that, hey, we want to fix this. How can we fix this? Is it, can we fix it? Right. It's simple advice, Amy, but my advice is you eat the frog in the morning, you tackle it head on and with honesty and truthfulness.
Yeah.
And that's really the same thing. And we tell brands when they come to, brand comes to us and they say that, they're having the problems with their 3PL, whatever, right? Our first thing is always like, you're better off to try to fix that, right? You're way better off to try to fix whatever the issues are with the 3PL than starting to go down a process of thinking about moving.
Yeah, no, I mean, Tim, 100%. I mean, giving out that type of honest advice might not benefit us today, but it certainly benefits us 3 months later and a year later. Because we also don't want the partner to come here and to take the same approach to problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So Tim, you might have something to add to that, but right?
Yeah, no, but honestly, like some of our best relationships and best customers are ones that have had issues at other 3PLs because, then we look great, right?
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily that, they've realized, to Brian's point, I think sometimes the customers realize, some of the things that they need to improve on too, right? So then the next relationship can sometimes be better.
Sure. Yeah. It's a two-way street. And since we do have a lot of customers here with us today, maybe I don't mean to put you on the spot, but what are some of the things that customers can do on, from their end to make sure that the partnership is going to be successful?
So we touched on it earlier. I mean, communication, being open, giving us as much information in advance as you can. It doesn't have to be accurate. It just has to be directional, so whatever information about when if you're going to run a sale, in May and then another one in November or whatever, whatever it might be, like just, letting us know about that in advance so we can plan, certainly, forecasts that get updated. Ideally what we like is getting a rolling 13-week forecast. It's updated to us every week. So you tacking on one more week every week, and then hopefully, as we get that forecast and then we, give the customer feedback on the variances between forecast and actual, we can help them dial in that forecast and get it over time, get it more and more accurate. And that's helpful for all of us.
Yeah, Amy, I think that you see a lot of these answers. If you ask a lot of experts in our industry, they're going to say communicate, data, et cetera, which is all true. I'm trying to think of how I can say it in a way that would be a little more valuable to folks. So I think it might go to a deeper issue with some of the reasons why we might, because we want to forecast, but why don't companies maybe either give it to us, or why aren't they good at it? What I think happens a lot of times is the process of switching or selecting 3PL is very cumbersome and it's heavy, and the tendency, I think, is to make it, once you get to this decision, just to hand it off and say, okay, my job's done. And maybe that's, I'm not saying people quit, but maybe they get a little lackadaisical. So what I would say is fight the urge to think that the job is done and now we can handle everything. And remember that you're our partner, and that you should take an interest in your supply chain. You should know your supply chain as well as us, or learn it. Take the opportunity to learn it more, and that'll then, because I think once you understand why the forecast is so important, you might tend to do it properly, right? So I think what happens, a lot of companies just they might have never run their supply chain. They simply don't know the value of data and dimensions and all these things that we ask for. And so it can come across as like, oh, why do you guys need all this stuff? Well, you don't know why if you've never really worked in a warehouse. So I think that's my suggestion is to if you don't know why we're asking for certain things, learn why we need them and understand why. Ask us questions, push back, like, why do you need this? Blah, blah, blah. We'll come to the warehouse, we'll show you, right? So I don't know if that's a more helpful. I think, because I think that the human tendency is to, you're outsourcing your supply chain. Yes, you're not picking orders and in the warehouse every day, but it's, we want you to not have to think about us a lot. But I think if you take a further interest in some of the details, you understand what we need to make it work. Is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's great advice. Tim, I'm going to kick over to you now. I know you've said before that Barrett acts as an extension of your clients' brands. So can you talk a little bit about how you partner with your brands from a marketing perspective?
Oh, well, Brian could probably talk about that more than I could. But yeah, we've done a lot of things. So I think one of the cooler things we've done over the last few years has been doing some work to connect different brands together. So we have a real good example. We have a customer that makes bags, and a customer that in an apparel company, and they sell to very similar markets, similar boutique type stores, similar customer. And, we connected them together, and they're working currently on, doing some co-marketing together and co-branding together to, it's beneficial for both brands. And, it's kind of where the 1 + 1 can equal 3. So we're always happy to do that. We put our customers in touch with other customers all the time to talk about things that might come up, or things that we think other customers do well. So, it's not really necessarily on the marketing side, but I guess that one example is sort of helping them grow sales. But we have also done a lot of things, sort of co-marketing, where we'll announce the launch of a new brand, and we're doing that obviously for our own benefit, but we also do it to help the brand, right? So it's good exposure for the brand to see, for their customers to see, or just get more exposure that. They're with a top-notch 3PL, and their e-commerce solution is going to be successful for the consumer.
Yeah, the kids call them collabs, Amy.
Yes,
we do. It's fun to hear Tim talk about it too, because it's true. Like we as a marketing guy, our customers are cool. Our industry's not, right? So I think our brands are awesome. We buy their products. They're selling to the whole world. We're not. And so a lot of our marketing, our branding is we're just highlighting we're lifting up our clients. And we have a big reach, right? So we might be maybe a more boring industry, but we have a good reach. So we say, hey, let us take advantage of our reach and let us promote you. And we get, we have the ancillary benefit of just being beside a really cool brand and being their supply chain provider. We don't talk about it a lot, but we're there in the background. We have a large email reach. We have a large LinkedIn reach. We've driven business for customers. It's not the reason why you come to Barrett, but it's certainly a benefit. And we have thousands of employees who buy stuff, and so and then the other things that we've done. We had a big initiative with signage and branding, and we really want the FTEs in the warehouse and the people on the floor to feel a part of the company, that they're the brand that is in the building. While they might be our employees, clients have really latched onto this when they come into the facility and they see their logos and they see their branding. They've kind of taken it up a level and brought in more stuff and bought T-shirts for the staff, and because they understand that John and Jane Doe picking orders every day for the same one or two accounts, there's value in their culture as well. And so, and it's been great to see customers come back like a year later and go right to the floor and take team photos with people on the floor, right? So, that's been exciting to kind of see. It's easy for us to talk about ourselves in a building, but when you come in and see the clients that we're promoting, it's a good look for everyone. I could talk about this for a long time, but the co-marketing thing has been, I think, a huge thing for our customers. The collabs have been big, and then Tim mentioned one other thing that I think is super valuable with an enterprise 3PL is the access to partners and kind of skipping the line for things. We have customers that say, "Hey, I'm considering an ERP. Do you have any suggestions?" "Oh yeah, we've done NetSuite 100 times. Like, here's the person to call and tell them Barrett sent you." Right. Mm-hmm. So and we do introductions for different customers. And that's just a huge plus value add in our network, right? For actual customers.
So we've got collabs and we've got merch. We're getting very trendy here. Let's talk a little bit, and maybe the result of that great marketing that you're helping with is that companies are growing and they need to scale. And we do want to talk a little bit about what it's like to scale within a 3PL network. So if you could talk, from your experiences there, what has to change physically, operationally, from the brand's perspective in order to scale with their 3PL?
What has to change on their end?
Yeah, on their end and on your end. How does that kind of play out?
So I think as brands scale, I guess one of the things that adds complexity is just growth of SKUs, right? And that always happens as brands grow. It'd be great to be able to sell 10 SKUs and grow at 25% a year, but usually it comes hand in hand with growing SKUs. So that adds a lot of complexity to the operation. So the initial engineered design that we might do for a brand, if they're growing fast, it could work for 3 or 4 years, and then there are step changes that we have to make to continue to drive costs down and make it frankly just make it even feasible to get the given volume out and on the same day. So we'll often do that, taking a new approach with an existing brand and get them into a new layout, a new automation, new technology. So that's something that is sort of on almost on an ongoing basis. We're constantly doing that. I touched on earlier we'll do Kaizens and quarterly process improvement initiatives with brands, and so sometimes those are incremental, and then sometimes they're larger step changes that will come out of those.
Yeah.
Amy, I would say SKU retirement program is my advice. I can think of the most valuable thing I could tell someone right now, especially for a growing, scaling brand, is just get in front of that. And nobody's going to listen, right? People listen to advice, but until the problem's there, it's very difficult to understand the inventory, how inventory costs affect it. That's the problem with retail for 100 years is too much inventory. And so I've seen it. It destroyed my first company, actually. So I have personal, pain there, but we see that all the time. And when a company comes here or is growing fast and they're on top of that, we kind of do an internal clap here, like good, because it's gonna drive cost for you, with us. It's also just not a good way to run your own company is to let inventory bloat. And so we do, Tim, we did that with Johnny O how many times, reducing their footprint.
Yeah, one of the things that one of the standard things that's in every one of our QBRs is from our, I touched on our data and analytics team earlier. We will show them all the SKUs that haven't sold in 30 days, all the SKUs that haven't sold in 90 days, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's a bit self-serving, but it's important for them too, right? For us to keep our costs down and then pass those costs, keep their costs down. It's really, really important. I mean, you think about that, like if you have 1,000 dead SKUs and we still, you have to put cycle count. It's not just that they're there and taking up space, but it's an increased footprint. You have to put cycle count time into them. There's all kinds of ancillary costs that people don't think about.
Yeah, Tim, that's just the cost with us. So let's talk about like running their business for a second. Like I know what that looks like, and that's money, that's revenue, that's dead money. You can't go out and buy inventory of stuff that's actually moving. It might slow down your fall launch of apparel. You might have to limit your purchasing. It affects your bank line. Like it's everything. Inventory is everything. So we try to really coach folks through that. But easier said than done, especially when if the financials are good and companies are making money, inventory tends to be the last thing that they look at, which is, backwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. Well, as we rapidly are running out of time, I want to wrap up with a little bit of advice, and maybe you can leave our audience with something sort of aspirational. And my question is, if brands are evaluating whether their current fulfillment partner is really set up to support them as they scale and where they're headed, what should they be asking? What should they be looking for? How do they make that evaluation?
So I guess, I would, if you're looking, forward, I would guess a focus on forward looking, right? So what is the 3PL going to invest in over the next 3 to 4 years? What do they see as priorities, for them to continue to, to be, competitive and continue to get better. So whether that's, technology or automation or, people, whatever the could be different things for different 3PLs. For us, it could be different things in different facilities. But I think understanding where they're investing and making sure that seems to line up where that brand is going.
Yeah, I would kind of piggybacking on that. I would say from a company standpoint, if I'm the decision maker on what kind of supply chain provider to go with, I would start with an internal 3 to 5 year plan. I wouldn't make decisions based on fixing now, because we can fix the now. Other 3PLs can fix the now. I would try my best to say, hey, where do we want to be in the next 3 to 5 years as a company, and who is best able to support that in the future? Because I think it's easy to be just short-sighted and try to put, switching to a new 3PL is in a way putting out a fire oftentimes, right? And not so much thinking about, okay, we want to be in shipping to Canada in a year. We want to open up another location in Europe. So we have to get the US straight now. So I would start internally and have, a forecasted plan of where do we want the company to be? Do we want to be in retail stores? Do we want to be in Costco? But it's going to be 2 years from now. And then say, okay, what 3PL can scale with that, our vision, knowing that, those visions are tough to put down on paper, but you should be thinking about the 1 to 2, 3 years from now. Stuff like, okay, we don't have an ERP now, but we're going to be adding one a year from now. So that's what you should be solving for today with your 3PL. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Got it. Well, we are out of time. I think this was a fantastic discussion. I feel like we could probably talk, for another hour or two about all these different fine points. But Bryan and Tim, thank you so much for bringing your expertise to the discussion and for joining us today.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Great.
See you.